Good morning.
Morning.
So, episode 5.
Episode 5.
It's exciting that we've got to episode 5.
Yeah.
All right, let's get in because we only have 30 minutes. I'm going to set the timer. All right, there we go, 30 minutes. So I'm going to start today with page 109 from my book, Remember, Words with a Beautiful Mess That Is Motherhood. So 109 says, when everything is spiraling and nothing is in your control, your authority is in how you respond. And we are going to talk about that today.
Yeah.
So the first part of that, when it says when everything is spiraling and nothing is in your control, we're going to talk about that in the way of people's perceptions of our business, of our creativity, view that from their side. And then for us, we're then going to dive into our authority is in how we respond to that.
Yeah.
And like I always say, our business, our art, our life is how we create it.
Yeah. I often hear you say that and I get really overwhelmed because I'm like, it feels such an enormous responsibility. And so often I'm like, oh my, okay. And when you kind of think of it in the big sense, it is overwhelming. But when you pull it back to literally the step each day, and we've talked so much about just showing up, not just showing up, but showing up and doing the work. But it's also, while we're showing up and doing the work, while we're showing up and putting our work out into the world, there's a response that's happening. And it's that response that as creatives, we can often get, knocked off course, or questions get put in our heads. And for example, yesterday, so I'm opening a studio, and it's been a lifelong dream of mine ever since I think I was about 10. And I used to organize all my pens and everything in my bedroom in all color, and I'd have everything out, and I've always had a drawing. I've always longed for 30 plus years to have a space, and it's a big thing. It's enormous in terms of my business. I've worked from home for 15 years. I have juggled motherhood and business. I have reset up and relocated and had things borrowed by children, and it's and also obviously the cost, the putting myself out there. And I bumped into someone, and and they were really excited, and they said, "Oh, I hear you're opening a little shop." And it really, my initial response was, I was like, and my initial response was like, well, there's actually nothing little about what I'm doing. It's quite a small space, of course. And if you're talking about that, yes, it isn't huge. But the space I'm making for my art, my business, my opportunity, opening up that space for opportunity is massive.
Other women in your community, that's huge.
Yes. I have lots of plans to work with the community and to hold lessons, and I want to raise some funds for the window that there is in the information center. They want to put a canopy over it and make it. And I said, okay, well, they don't have the funds. So I said, okay, I'll do a fundraiser. And I know I keep going to say little, and it's just a natural word that we use, but I think it's so ingrained and it has such an impact. And often it can have an impact on our ideas and our creativity and our ability to believe. Because as I was thinking yesterday, as soon as we start not, as soon as we start using certain words, it takes us down a level, and to build ourselves back up is work. And we're already doing all of this work. We're already doing all of this work to put ourselves out, to make the creations, to do all of those things. So, so I think that, and I did respond, but I reasonably positively. And then I put something on Instagram, and then, but in a very light-hearted manner. And then from that point on, I'm like, no, I know how big this is for me. I know how big this is for me. And it's for me about shifting that brain.
Well, then it comes down to us, as you said, having to get around that mindset of little, or like we've talked about in the last episode, you know, get a job. Can your little business sustain you? And here we are trying to have this confidence in ourselves, believing in ourselves, doing all this work, showing up all the time, continually putting ourselves out there. And yeah, like in that page going, when nothing is in our control, meaning how other people view it, we then have to come back to ourselves and the building of that trust in ourselves of going, I'm creating this, and it's not little, and the ripple effects it has, and the opportunities that it brings, and the space not only for my own creativity and my own what's coming out of my heart and soul, but like you said, you're helping your community. Like, these aren't little things. And we're continually pushed down into this little box or this little area or something little, when in fact the impact that women have, not just in their own lives but in their community, and they're setting examples for themselves, for their peers, for their colleagues, for other women in the community, the younger women in their community. I'm getting teary now because I'm like, it's not little.
No.
Oh God.
But you know, as well, is that I've spoken, because I've got newspaper up in the window at the moment because it's not ready. But I've started having conversations, and it's not just the younger, it's the older ladies. I've had conversations with 3, and our community is not massive, so you know, I've had conversations with 3 different ladies who I don't really know on the street, and it's like they open up. I used to paint, and I used to do this, and we, you know, and I was in this group, and it's like there's opening this space, and I'm having on the window in vinyl letters, space to create. And although it's my space, it's my studio, I want it to feel like an opening. Like I want it to feel like an opening. And it is a really, really big thing. And and I don't want, my hesitation, you know, is saying all this is I don't want people to worry about what they're going to say, because I'm just going to like pull it apart. But I just think that it was such a reminder for me personally that education of what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, my message, my why behind it all, it's on me to share that and to impart that. And I absolutely, I think often we can, and I've done it so many times, in that I'll share something and then I'll get upset, either, you know, because social media hasn't responded, or we create a book and we don't sell many copies, or we put it on an exhibition and not many, like, but unfortunately, and fortunately, because it can be a really fun journey, is that, and it does reinforce that message of showing up and doing the work, but it's also about the message and the education around it. You know, if you're a plumber, would you show up on Instagram and say, I've got these lovely pies. They'll look great in your house. You have to
Let me fix this
explain what they're for. You have to explain. And I know that art isn't functional, but in some ways it is functional. It is, because what it's doing is it's decorating our home, or it's making us
It's emotional.
it's
Art
emotional.
is
Yeah.
emotional
Yeah.
functionality.
Yeah.
It feels so deeply.
Yeah. 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 And I think there is this trap that we can fall down in, going, I've created this beautiful thing. It's really icky and I have to put a price tag on it, but I know that it's worth this. And I know that the hours I've invested, all the materials, all the X, Y, and Z. And there's such an expectation on the viewer, on the receiver, on the investor, to go, okay, well, you've sort of journeyed and now you're here, but it's almost, we have to create this gap. We have to create this emotional, almost physical gap of saying, this is where you fit. This is what we were talking a little bit about yesterday, is creating this space so they can naturally, the viewer, the investor, the client, they can bring themselves in and go, I can see myself here. I can see myself sitting in the living room enjoying that piece of art. I can see myself in
Reading
those
that song.
photographs. I can see myself in that community.
Yeah.
And that's the space. That's the space. And it's also, as artists, that's why I'm excited about creating an actual physical space, because I'm, so many people, particularly around our community, they have this, they want to create stuff, but they're maybe living on farms where the farms are such a big, encompassing.
It's life.
It's life. It's tractors and animals and thousands of them. It's like, where does my painting, my photograph, my interest in this thing, where does that fit? And that's really what,
well, it's creating opportunity. It's
Yeah.
creating opportunity. And I think life, everything we create is art. Our life, our love, our paintings, our photos, our dinners, our relationships, our conversations, it's all art. And, so creating that opportunity for, like you said, maybe a farmer's wife, or an older lady who perhaps was a farmer's wife, who's now not a farmer's wife, but she never had that opportunity to express herself in a different way, or create that painting that she's always wanted to create, or and you're creating the space and the opportunity and the experience for these women to come back to themselves, to express themselves in a new way or a different way. Or maybe they have always dreamt of themselves having a space that they could go to. I would love a space like that to go to. I think it'd be fabulous. And for, like you were saying yesterday, like, we're both in our 40s, and so, we're at different stages in our life and so for a kind of older woman to have a space where she thinks, oh, I can go there and I will be comfortable. And I will be accepted. I can explore, or whatever her reasoning is. The impact in that is huge. Like, I remember when my grandma was in the nursing home, they did an art class like every Wednesday or something. And grandma painted this A4 size piece of paper, and it was of lorikeets. The whole family was fighting over the painting because we didn't even know grandma could draw. This was weeks before she passed. She was 90 when she finally painted a painting.
Oh my gosh.
Like, it's so important. These spaces are so important.
Well, funny you should. It's funny, isn't it? Hearing you say that. My grandma used to paint too, and I used to go round to her house. This is my dad's mum, and they were up on the wall, but it was never really spoken about, and never really.
Yeah.
And her sister was a seamstress at the Royal Shakespeare Company for years, like 30 years, in the 50s, 60s, 70s.
Incredible.
Yeah, so she used to make all the costumes, and she was
Incredible.
on her own. And as a spinster, is that the word?
Yeah.
She used to drive this little Mini. Aunt Lorna, she was my like, and she had all of these buttons and fabrics, and she's
Incredible.
sort of my inspiration, really.
Yeah.
And it's that I used to always love going to her house. It was she was quite little. I'm going to say
Yeah.
little because she was quite little. She was probably
Yeah.
only about 5 foot.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was, but she was incredible. She was an incredible, strong, interesting
Yeah.
woman that was part of, like you say, part of the community, creating,
Yeah.
part of that art
Yeah.
scene. And yeah,
My dad's mum was similar. So when we were little, we would go to Nan's house and she had like the sewing room. And I always remember her sewing room. It seemed huge. And she had um just cupboards of just everything. Material, just wool, everything, fabric, whatever. And she always made a lot of our clothes. And I hated it at the time. And when she passed, we went to obviously clean out her home, and there was 4 bedrooms in the house, and there was cupboards and cupboards and cupboards of crocheted incredible art. It was artwork.
wow.
And we didn't even know, but she'd won like first prize like at like the Echo, we call it. So it's like this big show in Queensland, and it's huge, like hundreds of entries. Like she had hundreds of first prizes.
Wow.
No one even knew this stuff. You know?
Yeah.
Like she had her whole all of her cupboards were full of all these beautiful clothes that she'd made like in the 60s. So there was like all these really cool dresses and pants and jumpers. And I was like, oh my God. And because she really distanced herself from us, just because of her relationship with my dad. She never wanted sons, and she had 2 sons, and she wasn't happy about that. So, but her creativity, like as a young girl, I kind of was like, oh, that's just Nan, you know. But
Yeah.
she would make, so every Christmas we all got these Christmas cakes with the white icing, you know, that white
Yes.
fondant icing.
Yeah.
And she would make like a
A little
scene
scene.
to go on top. Incredible. Like, and I like the
It's such a lost art. I
it is
swear.
such a lost art. And like,
Christmas cake decoration. We were the same. We had deer and little
yeah,
Christmas
the
house and
Christmas
Father
trees.
Christmas. And then
Oh,
you do the little peaks on the icing. It's such a lost art.
yeah, yeah.
Next year I'm going to make one. I've decided.
And all of like her, you know, crocheted tablecloths. But I'm talking like the thread was almost as fine as like fishing wire. So the detail in that, like, yeah, incredible. Incredible
Yeah.
what we don't know about the older generation and what they can do.
Yeah. I totally agree. And exactly like you said a little bit earlier, it's almost like our generation are the connecting points between the older generation and the younger generation coming up. So I went to a secondhand shop and looking for cameras to decorate my studio. Not to decorate, but to have there as part of the history. And I bought one old brownie for $30. And the lady came out and she had a box and she said, "Oh, this is from a photographer's house. We're just gonna, it's junk to us." And in there were lenses and the magnifiers that you look through to look at contact sheets. And there were about 3 or 4 different older, not current digital cameras.
Yep.
And I think because they're more current,
Yep.
they don't have that sense of, "Oh, look, it's really old." But actually,
Nostalgia.
it is really old. Like, it's part of the, and even our children coming up now, they will look at it and say, it would be like having maybe a 20-year-old mobile phone.
Yep.
And it's those connecting points, because I often think about, and I know we talked about this yesterday when we were having a conversation, just the two of us. If you say this is an antique, it's 100 years old, and then it has value, and then, but then there's this gap of this time, and obviously vintage and retro and that sort of thing has kind of filled in that gap to a certain extent. But then there's this time frame that we're discounting the last year, the 2 years, the 10 years. And so what happens is our brain goes, this is current, and that's historical. Whereas the thing that I love about what we do as creatives and photographers is that actually we are filling in so many of those spaces to allow the timeline to flow more easily and allow our brains to not have to make all these leaps. And I think that was the thing. It's like when we said at the beginning, and you said, your life is how you create it. It feels really big, and you need to have those threads to, almost the sliding scale. And what I love about this conversation is we're talking about that, opening up that gap and having that ability. And that's why I've got lots of art books and photography books. And actually some of them are like 30 years old now, because obviously it was when I was I realized when I looked at one of them. Because that's when I was at university studying or at school. And then I'm going to have some current ones. And it's about elevating what we're doing right now and contextualizing it into, and I think I know when I was studying art history and I came out with my degree, and it was 25-ish years ago. And my brain, I mean, then it was different. The opportunities weren't there. I was like, well, I have this degree in art history. What job can I do? I thought, well, I can work in an auction house, and that's selling art, obviously. And I could work in a gallery. So that's beautiful art that's been made. And then I curate it. And, what did I say? Auction house, gallery. And then obviously you're going into publishing and that sort of thing, which I wasn't really interested in. And obviously now there's a lot more. Creative field is wide open now in comparison to 25 years ago. But it was because in my mind, I was going, art history is then, and now I'm now, and the connection point wasn't there. Whereas what I'm really excited about, and what I love about what you do when you work with people, and what I'm doing with this space and with what I do, is it's allowing the gap that we are talking about, the space to open up and allow ourselves to fill it with those connecting dots, with that space.
And I think too, as you're saying that, I'm thinking it allows us to open up to our own history, our own stories, and understand that, like you said, you were at uni 25 years ago. Bring that wisdom and that knowledge and your life experiences, and you have that space to bring it through to now. Instead of continually trying to just be in the now.
Oh,
and not I mean, it's, of course, it's important to be in the present and
Yeah.
understand what's happening now. However, we all have these incredible life experiences,
Yeah.
education in different fields, experience in different things. You were trained in analog, you now use digital. Like, there's so many opportunities for us to look at our own history
Mm.
and our own wisdom and knowledge and acknowledge that
Mm.
and
When I was
use
talking
that.
to these ladies, there was one who I was standing outside talking to someone else outside the studio because we'd just been doing something, and this lady came along, and really she looked tired, and she was looking down because she was walking. I guess probably in her 60s, late 60s. And we started talking. And as soon as we started talking about creativity and art, her shoulders came back, her whole body, and this big smile came on her face. And it was like someone had
That's
opened up.
priceless.
It's just incredible. It's so incredible. I'm slightly worried I'm not going to get any work done in the studio.
You'll just be having everyone pop in for a cup of tea and a chat.
But I think it's so magical. Maybe I'll have to have days, I have to say, I've decided already that I'm going to have little signs, and one saying on location when I'm out on a shoot,
Yep.
and then one that's saying recording podcast.
Yes.
When we're talking. Don't come back in like 10 minutes because I'm recording a podcast. But yes, I think that's so magical and so important because, and I know we've used the word little, and it's really semantic because it's not really about that. It's more about the closing down of what we do as women.
Yep.
Because every morning we get up and there are, particularly if you're a mum, there are, a good couple of dozen things and people and things that need to happen, before you even kind of get a chance to think about yourself. I mean, if you're one of these organized people and you wake up earlier, which I should do, and I'm kind of trying to, but if, we're kind of building all these blocks every day, and then we're work and career and everything are on top of that. And actually, if we push that down and make it smaller and don't acknowledge it and package it up to be our side hustle or our little thing or the little, it's like,
Yeah. It comes back to when I hear you speaking like that, it comes back to, like we were saying in the last episode, about how creative business can be.
Yeah.
It's the same with life.
Yeah.
Life is so creative. Like this morning, Scott rang and he's like, shit, I left the bloody truck keys in my pocket in my work pants from yesterday. Can you bring them round? And he's at the moment, they're on site and it's like 5 minutes from home. And so it was literally like, oh, okay. So I'd got up early. I'd already done yoga and, whatever. But it was like, it was just having that movement and openness of, okay, let me just quickly shuffle a few things because I need to be back before 8 o'clock because I'm talking to Chloe. And it's being creative in your thinking in your whole life.
Yeah.
I think,
but that's what women are doing already.
Yes, exactly. And we don't acknowledge that it is creative and it can be fun, and don't put so much pressure on ourselves to be so serious all the time. Like everything will work out.
Yeah.
And when we're open, as you said, like that lady's chest opened, her face opened, you automatically see, when you're in that space, new opportunity.
Yeah.
And your brain just shifts.
Yeah.
And new pathways are going, yes, like this is what could happen. Imagine what could happen.
Yeah. And you
like,
become more approachable and more, and people want to work with you more, and all of that sort of stuff.
And that opens opportunity in itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
And it is a practice. I always say business is a practice, art is a practice. You're not always going to get it right.
Mm.
It's a practice.
Yeah.
But so is life.
Mm. Yeah. And the expectation as well, just because we're doing something.
Oh, God. It's 30 minutes.
Yeah, I'm just going to, so just because we're doing something, we can't automatically expect others to understand it, to want to buy into it, without any kind of effort or education or guidance or hand-holding or
And people don't have to, because they have their own stories, their own opportunities. But by us being ourselves, and as you said, making or creating the life and the art and the business that we want to create, and being true to that and showing up and, you know, opening space and opening gaps in conversation, in art, in spaces, in, you know, and making it bigger. We will bring in, like your ladies in the street, we will bring in people that are attracted to that.
Yeah,
for a reason.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've already said to myself, it's a working space for me. And in terms of number of people through the door, it doesn't need to be massive for it to work, which is one of the fantastic things about being located where I'm located. Because I know if you're in a city, it would be totally different. It's like a studio space is going to cost me thousands, and therefore I have to be able to cover that. So my expectations are, this is actually a space for me to take my work out of my home, to give more space for my children and our connection at home. And then it's a space to be able to show my work bigger than on Instagram. And it's a space to have meetings. And even I've said to a few local people, you know, it doesn't have to be ladies, but I've said, if you want to hold a business meeting in here, I can just go next door to the cafe and have coffee, and you can use the space. And that's the thing. It's that multifaceted opportunity. And that's what I'm excited about.
And you're bringing awareness of the spaces in a community. Like you said, this space has sat vacant for a while. You're bringing a new awareness of what a space can be.
Yes. It's a funny space. It's been a chemist. It's been a wellness studio. It's been a hairdresser. And that's why I essentially overlooked it, because I thought, and it's quite an unassuming space. And I thought, I don't really want to be in a space that's sort of kind of overlooked and kind of passed by, and, you know, and it was actually someone, a lovely article.
So then you make it a destination.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's exciting.
It is.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Watch this space.
Literally.
Maybe that's what we should call this episode. Watch this space.
Yes. That's a good one, actually. We'll call it that.
Perfect. Job done.
All right. I'm going to stop this one, and we'll go on to the after 30.